Welcome back to the 2016 presidential debate. I'm your host and moderator, Franz Blucher. That's Blucher. Stupid horses. Who let them in the first place? Okay, on to our presidential candidates. And we are debating the topics with the two frontrunners, Mr. Frankenstein. Frankenstein, sorry. Introduce yourself. Nice to meet you as well. And his opponent tonight is from the senator from Pennsylvania. Thank you. I do have a nice shirt. Thank you very much. And a nice tie. Thank you very much. So, topics for debate is the economy. This is going over to you, Mr. Frankenstein. Well, let me ask the question first. So, the economy right now in Pennsylvania is not doing so hot. What would you do to fix that problem? Just remind you, you do have 1 more minute to talk. So that's it? Good point. Good point. I see where you're going there. And counter? You had your time, Mr. Transylvania. You had your time. I see your point too. Good argument. Good argument. How would you deal with the problem that's happening in the streets around Pennsylvania of monster phobia? And? Oh, okay. Interesting point. And counterpoint? So that's your official stance? Okay, good to know. All right, on to the next question. This is another question from your host and moderator, Mr. Blucher. Well, my question is to the candidate from Pennsylvania. How would you handle the hay shortage around your town? Wow, that's profound. Short and sweet. Okay, and your counterpoint, candidate from Pennsylvania? What was that again? All right. Sounds good. All right, so I have another question from, actually got an email here, got someone from Twitter tweeting in at the presidential candidate, hashtag monster versus monster debate. All right, so there has been a recent spike in pitchfork sales in Pennsylvania. So this is going to the candidate from Pennsylvania. How would you handle the potential fear of more of the monster phobia happening in Pennsylvania? It sounds like you're throwing down the gauntlet. You want the people to stay in fear? Okay, and counterpoint from Pennsylvania? Strong words. Strong words. All right, so we got another question from an undecided voter. Go ahead.
Yes, my question is for the senator of Pennsylvania. I hear that you got your brain transplanted into a monster. Is this true? And if it is, then what did you get transplanted from the monster? This is Jpar, and you are watching the We Promise Nothing show. This week on the show, we have Myles, we have Zube, and we have Da Boo. But before we get things started, I'd like to remind everyone that the music you're listening to right now has been brought to you by SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. If you need great music for your podcast, check them out. SoundsLikeAnEarful.com. Now, this week we review Young Frankenstein. It is the first of many fan requests, few fan requests, I should say, that we are going to take during the month of October. And our first request comes to us courtesy of Scott, who is a longtime listener and has also participated a couple times on the show. But before we get into the review, why don't you say hello to the audience, guys?
Guten Tag.
Buongiorno.
Da Boo here.
All right, so we only got one actual introduction there from Da Boo.
I love how you guys kept yours so vague.
And apparently them two are going to be speaking in Italian and
German
through the rest of the podcast.
Buongiorno, mi chiamo Myles.
Google Translate in the house.
I think he called you a really bad word, Jay.
You heard that too, didn't you? All right, so we are going to be reviewing Young Frankenstein. And as I said, this is a fan request, and during the month of October, we take fan requests. We do that. That's right. So you can leave a comment on YouTube. You can leave it on Facebook. You can leave it on our Twitter. And we will take into consideration for the month of fan requests, which is October. We did it last year. And it was such a great thing. We're doing it again. So now, Young Frankenstein is the movie. It is a comedy directed by Mel Brooks. It's written by Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks. It's starring Gene Wilder, Peter Boyle, Marty Feldman, and many others. When Mel Brooks, so just a little bit of trivia here. When Mel Brooks was preparing for this film, he found that Ken Strickfaden, who had made the elaborate electrical machinery for the lab sequence in the Universal Frankenstein film. So this movie's based off of Frankenstein. It is a spoof of that, as Mel Brooks does tend to spoof films. He found that it was still alive and in the Los Angeles area. Brooks visited Strickfaden and found that he had saved all the equipment and stored it in his garage from the set of Frankenstein, for the lab anyways. Brooks made a deal to rent the equipment for his film and gave Strickfaden the screen credit he deserved, but hadn't gotten for the original films. So there you go. So they used pretty much the same set for the lab for the original Frankenstein, giving it that authentic look, making it very much look like the film that it was spoofing. The shifting hump on Igor's back, that's right, Igor, was an ad-libbed gag of Marty Feldman's, who was the actor who played Igor. He had serendipitously been shifting the hump back and forth for several days when cast members finally noticed. It was then added to the script. So I guess he's quite the cut-up even on off the screen. So the blind man's part, which was played by Gene Hackman, the line, "I was gonna make espresso," was not in the original script, but it was ad-libbed by Hackman during the shooting, and is the reason for the immediate fade to black as the crew immediately erupted into laughter. Hackman was uncredited for when the movie was originally released. Whatever.
Yeah.
One line, he was like, oh, he wrote that one line. Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks did much more work. Mel Brooks usually appeared in his own films, but Gene Wilder insisted that Brooks should not appear in the film. He felt that Brooks' appearance would ruin the illusion and would only make the film if Brooks promised not to appear in it. Brooks didn't mind in the least, but did, however, make off-camera appearances as the Howling Wolf, Frederick's grandfather, and the Shrieking Cat. In 1974, rock band Aerosmith took a break from a long night of recording to see this film. Steven Tyler wrote the band's hit "Walk This Way" the morning after seeing the movie, inspired by Marty Feldman's first scene, the "Walk This Way" scene. Terry Garr originally auditioned for the role of Elizabeth, the fiancée, while Madeline Kahn was the frontrunner for Inga, the assistant. But Kahn ultimately decided she'd rather play Elizabeth, leaving director Mel Brooks with the task of recasting the Inga role. Undaunted, he called Garr in and told her that if she could come back the next day with a German accent, he'd like her for the part. She looked at Mel and said, "Well, yes, I could do the German accent tomorrow. I could come back this afternoon." And maybe you should do the German there, Zube. And the part was hers. Gar has said that she based her accent on Cher's wig maker, whom she worked with on the Sonny and Cher Comedy Hour. And according to Mel Brooks, in the commentary of Spaceballs, when Gene Wilder came on the cast for Blazing Saddles, he requested that Mel Brooks do his movie idea next, and that movie turned out to be this film, Young Frankenstein.
Very cool facts.
And speaking of Gene Wilder, we're going to do a little bio, and I think you got something there, Zube, to kind of pay our respects to Gene Wilder, who has recently passed away.
Yes, indeed. So Gene Wilder began his career in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde was a small part, but he became famous as a favorite of writer-director Mel Brooks. His wacky roles in films such as Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Blazing Saddles, and Young Frankenstein made him an unforgettable comedy icon. In his later years, Wilder became a serious novelist, writing a memoir and several novels. He was married to fellow actor and comedian Gilda Radner until her death in 1989. Gene Wilder died on August 28th, 2016 at the age of 83. This is according to the biography website. And also it's mentioned, because there's also a photo on there too, about with him and Richard Pryor, because they did 4 movies, right, Myles?
That is correct.
And the most famous one was Hear No Evil, See No Evil, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite Gene Wilder movies.
And to this day, I've yet to have seen it. I've been wanting to. I just never got around to it.
Yeah, it might be on Netflix.
Yet another.
I don't know if you guys know this, but last week, Fathom Events hosted a special screening of Young Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah?
And Mel Brooks was the host and moderator of the event
Nice.
in honor of Gene Wilder.
That would have been fantastic to see.
Yes.
You said there was an award that Gene Wilder won for an appearance.
Yeah, 2003, Gene Wilder played Mr. Stein on Will and Grace, and he won a Best Supporting Actor award or an Emmy, Best Supporting Emmy award, sorry.
Nice.
And that was the last acting gig that he did, and then he just went straight to being an author.
Yes, that's right.
So I wonder if the Mr. Stein name is like a throwback to this character, Young Frankenstein.
Well, I don't know how to confirm it or not, but what are the odds that his last acting credit was Mr. Stein and he played Mr.
And they very much, and like...
Froderick Frankenstein?
Yeah.
I think that's
So they very much made fun of like the Stein and Steen, so it's like it almost seems like it would be kind of an in-joke to do that.
Yes, I agree.
All right, so Gene Wilder will be missed for his many great roles, and he'll always be seen in even memes as Willy Wonka. It's funny how these people just affect our lives even when they're gone. They still very much a part of it. So.
Well, he was an inspiration to all the next generation of comedians, I think, as well.
Yeah.
So they and also for the style of Mel Brooks films that came out after Mel Brooks stopped making the films, it was still in that same kind of style. And that also, when you think of Mel Brooks films, you think of Gene Wilder.
All right, so a tip of the hat to Mr. Wilder. He will be missed. And now we'll go on to the review of Young Frankenstein. We've given you all the facts. We've talked about Gene Wilder, who is the main star of the film. But how is this film really? How does it rate as a Halloween film? And what did we think about it, more importantly? Because that's why you're here, right? You care about our opinions so much. Anyways, so Myles, you want to get started with your first impressions of this?
Sure. So I seen this movie a long time ago when I was a kid. This movie was 1977, I think it came
It
out.
was 74.
74. So it came out 11 years before I was born, to date myself a little bit. But I did see it when I was a kid, and I didn't really get a lot of the references, and I'm kind of glad I watched it now as an adult, because there was so many sexual innuendos just sprinkled all over the place from start to literally
very
the
Mel
finish.
Brooks.
Yeah, so that was interesting to see. Overall, as a movie, I really enjoyed it. It was fun. You definitely had to pay attention because there was not only slapstick humor, but there was also, like I said, hidden meanings or lot of sarcasm or play on words or, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, you just have to really pay attention, and it's a fun ride.
And we will be getting to spoilers a little bit later on. Boo, what are your first impressions of Young Frankenstein?
Frankenstein.
Oh, sorry.
Get it right. I'm kind of like Myles said. I think this was one I felt like I'd grown up with for so many years. I actually hadn't seen this one, I think, since the other day when we watched it.
Yeah, and
I felt like I must have seen that at least a good 12 years ago. Like it was a good long time ago, right? So of course, when I'm watching it for the second time, I feel like there was just so many scenes that just brought back perfect memories as to why a classic such as this just kind of stands the time easily. Without saying anything else, this movie just makes it easy for any movie lover to actually love what Mel Brooks brought, as well as Gene Wilder. My God, but yeah, Gene was actually a character I could never really relate to as a kid. He wasn't the kind of actor I watched, so that's probably why this movie of all of them was one of my favorites of his.
Well, to be honest, like I watched bits and pieces of it when I was a kid, but this movie was before I think all of our time in general. It was like early 70s, and movie styles and it's just not like the same kind of comedy as today. So I feel kind of too critical when I'm watching it. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I liked it. There's some funny parts, some classic Mel Brooks stuff, but I felt kind of, it was like a movie that I can pretty much do without type of thing.
All right. All right. Well, I mean, this isn't the first time I've seen this. I've seen this once before, too. It was a while ago. I didn't see it when I was younger. I seen it in my early 20s. So I understood the humor the first time I had seen it. So it kind of threw me for a loop because I didn't know what to think. Because I knew it was a Mel Brooks movie. And I'm like, okay, like Mel Brooks is the same guy that does, I was like thinking Men in Tights and Spaceballs is what I was thinking, because that's what my reference before I had seen Young Frankenstein. So I was like, okay, he's obviously a comedic director. And when this kind of starts out, it starts out a little slow. It's in black and white. You're like, it's like, I mean, isn't this supposed to be a comedy? You're not sure. You know what I mean? You're watching it and it kind of just slowly, it gets funnier as it goes along. So, I mean, it's something you gotta watch a little bit, or at least for me, I felt, before you started getting the jokes and started saying, okay, like, they're having fun with this now, you know what I mean? It takes a bit to get there, but when you do, the jokes start rolling, it starts getting pretty good, and it's just something very different. It's something that I like to take away from it. It's a spoof of Frankenstein, and like, when these Universal, they came out in the 70s, I mean, Universal movie monsters were done by this time. Like, I mean, they were like, but this is a spoof of those types of movies. So they took like this old genre and they twisted it and they made it like what Mel Brooks does, and with the help of Gene Wilder, spoofed the Universal horror movie monster franchise. So with that being said, it's a different take on it, and it does pay off if you're patient enough to go through the whole thing, Zube. Just kidding. All right, so with that being said, why don't we get on to our ratings on this? Let's not dig into it just yet. We'll save our favorites and least favorites for the end, as per usual. So Myles, want to go rating first?
Sure. I'm going to give it a solid 4.
Boom. 4 from Myles. You know it's got to be good.
Yeah, that's a good one. Do you want to know my least favorites?
I don't want your least favorite yet,
Right.
but just give me a little bit why you gave it a 4 without too much giving anything away.
Okay, I give it a 4 because it didn't reference anything that is commonplace at that time, and I can see why Zube might not have enjoyed it, because it doesn't. There's nothing now. There's nothing cultural. There's nothing. They don't mention any musicians that maybe somebody doesn't like, or a TV show or whatever. So you really have to rely on Gene Wilder's slapstick comedy, moving around really loud all of a sudden, and Mel Brooks' writing style, where you really have to pay attention because everything is an innuendo or a sarcastic remark or an undertone. So, but I enjoyed that. I now, being an adult now, nice to say that out loud, I can really appreciate all the undertones, all the secrets, I guess, that the movie tells the adult, but a kid wouldn't necessarily see. Kind of like today's Shrek movie. Shrek's movies, they don't really reference nowadays scenarios, but there's adult humor in there.
Yeah.
So you can watch it with your kids as well. So I give it a 4.
Makes sense.
And Boo.
See, I kind of feel like because I never followed Gene's work that closely, I kind of feel like I should be giving more than what I might be giving him.
But you are a Mel Brooks fan, though.
Yes, very much so. I kind of agree with you, actually, that they have a nice, interesting marry of their work. You know, how Mel has a certain way of writing, and Gene certainly has a certain air about him on film. I mean, he's a character all in himself. You know, you can't but tell he's on screen, you know, like he's just there. You know what? I think I might have to give this one a 3.5 out of 5, but for only one reason why I did get a 4 was because it just wasn't so much a movie that, for me, might feel like, I think why you commented on how it wasn't a need to see movie, I think is kind of what you labeled it as. I love watching it. It's entertaining. It's still got the humor, even though some of it might be slightly dated. It still feels easily referenced in today's culture, even though it doesn't have that immediate cultural reference, as you said, right? But yeah, no, 3.5 out of 5.
All right, and for me, I think I also would give it a 3.5. And it's funny, but I find it does have a slow beginning. You're not even really sure if it is a comedy at first when you're kind of first watching it, so you're not sure. It takes a bit to get there. So you kind of have to be a bit patient with it, but it does get there, and, you know, it does make it better than an average movie, so that's why, you know, it is at a 3.5. So, because it does have the comedy chops to kind of bring it there and just make it better than, you know, an average movie.
Yeah, I have to be critical about this because I'm sorry, all respect to Gene Wilder. No, this is basically his baby, and I don't know, Myles. You mentioned before off air that didn't he get nominated for an Oscar for this?
Yep, both him and Mel Brooks got nominated for best adapted screenplay.
Right, because it was adapted from Mary Shelley's. It was
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, because it was like the spoof, like
That's right.
Jpar mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, so out of respect to that, I was going to give it a lower mark, but I'm going to say it's a 2.5 for me.
Whoa. Wow.
And I'm going based on Mel Brooks films. And the thing is, maybe if I watched it in order of like Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, yada, 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 Spaceballs, and then Robin Hood Men in Tights, then maybe I would appreciate it more. But basically just watching it recently after have Spaceballs and Robin Hood Men in Tights, my top two, so high up on the echelon of Mel Brooks movies, this didn't really compare. And the thing is, I know they're spoofing the old Frankenstein movie itself, like back in the 20s, where it was like, you know, silent picture type of thing, as well with black and white and all that stuff. So I appreciate that. I like the slapstick humor that was like in there, but wasn't enough. Mm-hmm. And also like the jokes about the Blucher one, and then I think the you haven't touched your food joke as well. I don't know if you guys remember that at all. Like, he was just upset that the experiment didn't happen.
Are we doing?
Well, you're kind of giving spoilers away right now.
Sorry, okay, but basically those two, there wasn't enough scenes in that too. That's what I'm trying to get at. There's not enough scenes of like that kind of humor in there compared to the other ones. And the other, like Spaceballs, was like pretty much the whole movie was like those little pun jokes and slapstick jokes. This one just was lacking. That's why I have to give it a 2.5. And I had to watch it twice because I fell asleep during the first time.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's never a good sign.
Okay, so we're going to flip in the spoiler town here. Let's dig in because I see like Zube has some shit to say here. And I might have the bit to retaliate. You know what? I think like after seeing movies, I agree. If I hadn't seen like previous Mel Brooks movies like Blazing Saddles or Men in Tights or Spaceballs, then maybe I wouldn't appreciate the humor of this Young Frankenstein. Maybe I wouldn't get it because I wouldn't see that it was like that kind of humor. But because I know Mel Brooks' style, I do see the in-jokes. I do see, you know, the dirty humor, the innuendos that he usually throws in. And for me, that's what makes it enjoyable.
I find it actually kind of interesting that you went immediately towards all the other Mel Brooks movies. Mm-hmm. You can see. I don't know if I would treat this as a Mel Brooks movie. I know it's very much written, as Mel Brooks, would have written it. Mm-hmm. The point is that I feel like Mel Brooks had a certain writing style that got just that much better over the years, and I think that's why we bring up Spaceballs and Men in Tights. They all have a lot of their own to bring on screen.
Yeah.
This one, I think, kind of felt like it was a nice marrying, I think, of the two artists. I think that's part of the reason why I don't treat this completely like a Mel Brooks movie. You almost can't. But Gene, I think, in his own right, I kind of feel like stole the show almost. No offense, he's the star of the show, obviously, but the point is that his character was the focal point of the entire story.
Right.
And because he, pretty much stood out on screen so easily, whether it was black and white or color later, it worked out perfectly for him. Mel Brooks had to kind of be in the background just to even be acknowledged, let's face it. But acknowledging the simple fact that he had great writing in the whole movie.
Speaking of stealing the show, Marty Feldman,
Oh, yeah.
the actor who played Igor.
Yeah, we certainly have to acknowledge him.
Like, what'd you think about him, Zube?
I liked him.
Yeah, he's hilarious.
He's my favorite character in the whole movie.
Oh, yeah,
actually.
he's my favorite character, too. He's hilarious. What about you, Myles?
He's not my favorite character, but it was
the
nice
the Frankenstein monster?
For me, Gene stole the show.
Yeah, Gene is
start
the
to finish.
yeah.
The way he was animated and everything. To me, it was the interactions between him and all these other kooky characters throughout the entire movie is what did it for me. So yeah, his interaction with Marty or Igor, right off the bat, because his name was Igor, but he's just saying that because of how
the way he's saying Frankenstein,
Yeah.
Frankenstein, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
So-
like, yeah, sure,
And then it
yeah,
became a
then I'm
running
Igor.
joke throughout-
yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So
It's such a hard toss-up between those two characters, though. I have to agree. Gene, I think, again, I will use those words again, stole the show. I prefer the fact to say that Marty, I think, was just kind of like that hidden underdog that you might not have thought would have been funny, but turned out to be hilarious the entire time, if not probably one of the funniest.
Yeah, it's like, where'd you get this brain?
Yeah.
His name was Abby Normal.
Yeah, his name was Abby. Abby something. And I'll be quite honest. If I start listing off a lot of the favorite scenes in this movie, they really do include him almost every time. So
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
if it wasn't for him, Gene would have been simply by himself, and that would have been a lot for him to kind of bring up on screen. Obviously, he probably would have pulled it off, but I just felt like Marty did such a great job.
It definitely gave
Igor.
him a great kooky character, as Myles said, to play off of. So that was done really well. I don't know. I thought that Marty Feldman did a great job at this.
And
as
almost just as animated as Gene, I might add. Gene was always animated. He's always been as such, but Marty kind of did it in his own way.
All right, so let's dig into it then. And since you got something to say first, Zoop, what's your favorite and your least favorite about this movie?
should we tell these people a brief synopsis of what the movie actually is?
Well, I mean, the movie it's a comedy version. It's a spoof of Frankenstein.
Yeah, but it's also
It's the grandson, hence the
Okay,
young
right.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
So
He
it's
inherits-
actually supposed to be the but essentially it's the Frankenstein story. It's the grandson of Frankenstein. He's like Frankenstein because he doesn't want to be associated with the Frankenstein name because his grandfather was his grandfather. Or his father's
It was
work.
his grandfather.
Grandfather's work was cuckoo, and it was doo doo as he puts it. So he just doesn't want to be associated with that because he wants to be his own, break out on his own as a scientist. And then, of course, he does fall into the footsteps of his grandfather, and he finds the notes of how to make his own Frankenstein or Frankenstein monster, however you want to put it. And it's just a comedy version of that, and it's filmed in black and white to give it that old Universal monster feel.
Have you guys ever seen it in the color version?
no.
There was one made. I don't know if it's needed. Black and white suits it quite well without having the need of color, but color actually gave it a lot more life.
Yeah, I watched it. I rented it in HD in black and white, which is it's a contradiction right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, HD in black and white. Thanks for that.
Anywho.
But
Yeah.
Well,
Let's go into our favorites and our least favorites. So, what you're saying there, Zoo? What's your favorite and what's your least favorite about this movie?
All right. Basically, the favorite was Igor. That was doing most of the pun jokes in the movie with the Blucher, the extra Blucher one, because it was like 4 times I mentioned Blucher, and then he went out of the scene and came back and said Blucher just for his own satisfaction, which was hilarious. And then also Walk This Way, which he referenced with Aerosmith. Basically, he was getting Gene Wilder to walk the same way, like that sentence, and then Gene Wilder is supposed to be the scientist and be the smarter guy. He was actually walking, and then he stops like, I fell for that old joke type of thing. And then the other jokes that are referenced too. I would like the one with that I referenced before about you haven't touched your food yet, when he was upset that basically the experiment didn't work. It's like, there, I touched my food.
Yeah, he starts pounding his hands into his own plate of food.
And that's very like Mel Brooks humor, like that old dad humor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I appreciated those jokes, and watching it the second time, there's some jokes further down the road. But yeah, like Jpar mentioned before, it started off really slow. And to me personally, I wasn't a fan of the whole genre in the first place about the black and white monster movies. And then it started off slow and not as many jokes as the Spaceballs and Robin Hood Men in Tights. That's kind of why I fell flat, and that's why I didn't like it. That was my dislike. The like was the puns and the jokes in it. Just needed more of those jokes.
And Myles, your favorite and least favorite?
My favorite, I know this is contradictory to what a lot of you are saying, but I actually like the set design, and I really like the lighting, and there was so many moments where the camera just really made me feel like I was watching an old horror flick, and I thought he did a really good job paying tribute to that. And Gene Wilder, he stole the show. The slapstick comedy, getting stuck in the bookcase. There was so many moments where I couldn't believe I was actually laughing. Like, this guy is hilarious. He was like the 1977 version or 1974 version of Jim Carrey. Is the best way I can describe him, because he was serious when he needed to be, but then he would just all of a sudden be wacky. Like, he had a split personality on set. And I'm going to disagree with you in how it starts slow. To me, the way it started really set the pace for the whole film. You see a guy fighting over a book with a dead person in a coffin. I'm like, and they really dragged out the scene. I'm like, okay, when's he gonna let go of this book? I actually enjoyed it. I thought they're really true to the nature of what they're going for, and they didn't back away from anything, or they weren't shy to take risks. And to me, it paid off. The bad thing for me, the sexual innuendos ruined it for me.
Really?
There's one scene, spoiler alert, where the monster is on top of Frankenstein's fiance, and she's completely horrified. She's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make love to you, you monster. And then she looks down at his von Stucker, and I guess it's larger than the average von Stucker. So now she's all of a sudden turning what I would consider a model rape into, let's see where this goes. And then, I don't know, to me that kind of grossed me out a little bit. I can't believe they made a rape joke in a 1974 movie. And
I wasn't even going to mention that. I was just hoping nobody else was going to notice that.
It's pretty huge. It's a pretty significant thing, because...
What, the Von Stucker or the scene?
Well, there was a little bit of a... both.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yeah, I could have done without the constant Von Stucker, whatever they call it, jokes over and over again.
I guess it was because she was such a prude with Gene Wilder's character, right?
And she didn't want to kiss. She didn't want her hair to be touched. She didn't want to sleep in the same bed. She wanted to have sex after marriage and all that. Yeah. And then threw it all out the window to...
take the Von Stucker.
Apparently the right man at the right time just came around.
I don't think it mattered about the man, because she was horrified.
No, you're quite quick.
She was totally content with the
Stucker.
The Von Stucker.
She wanted to
be stucked.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, which is it's still a bad image though.
It was a bad image, and I honestly could have done without that. So I would have given this movie a 4.5 if it had one less Von Stucker joke in it, because that was too much. It was too many.
All right. So you weren't appreciative of the monster's little monster then?
It was not little.
Okay, sorry. Big little monster.
That's coming from experience over there.
Little big monster.
Little big monster.
Oh, thank you.
That's honestly too bad, because that's actually a lot of what you just described as part of what I really enjoyed out of the movie. That was Mel Brooks, I think, at his finest, honestly. The sad thing is that you guys pointed...
that scene?
No, in his writing style. I mean, clearly he's got an odd sense of... What's so funny?
I don't know.
Clearly you don't agree.
That's so Mel Brooks.
Yeah. He really sets up a good sex scene.
No, honestly, it was. I think for me, it was the. Well, here I'll say my favorites because I think what you had pointed out was the pace of the movie was slow going for I think you guys. I think for me it was the opposite. It was almost a little too fast, but only for one reason. It was almost like watching a man slowly become crazy, but wasn't so slow about it. He came about, the notes of his grandfather who taught him how to, learn how to bring back life from dead cells, simply put. And how crazy does he become? He becomes instantly crazy by reading one book. That's it. That's all it is. Then that's pretty much the Mel Brooks writing as I feel it. Because if I look back at like Spaceballs and again Robin Hood Men in Tights, certain little moments have their moments where they kind of, will flip it on its head before you know it, and you suddenly realize it's too late. I don't know. I don't know if it's just me that notices it, but Mel has a certain way of having humor where it may not be appropriate, but it'll certainly get you laughing.
May I interject?
Yes, you may.
You're saying that it took him a while to get or he got crazy too fast?
Well, I mean, in terms of the character, because if you actually watch Gene Wilder's, I guess you could say the way his character developed into instant, crazed scientist coming out of, the crazy castle. That's simply what I saw out of his, which was the great way to transition into being the character Gene, I think, was trying to portray on film. That's perfectly fine. I enjoyed that, but it was almost too quick. Because I felt like by the time he was already, stumbled upon the means of actually bringing Frankenstein the monster to life, everyone takes him to, for what he is, a kook. He hadn't become a kook instantly. I mean, the village considers him a kook because his grandfather was, but everything else kind of fell out of place for me in some ways.
Now, the reason why I wanted to interject is right at the beginning, he's giving a lecture on brain activity, brain stems, your nervous system.
Right.
What he does to demonstrate this is he disables the nervous system of an old man volunteer. And when he does that, he kicks him right in the nuts, right off the bat. And he said, look, nothing happened. Now, what sane person would kick an old man in the nuts? And then as they're wheeling him away, they're like, give him an extra $1. And then they take the collar off and he grabs his nuts and he's in extreme pain.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, he gets so upset, he stabs his own leg with a scalpel.
Yeah.
And then he hides it from his students by crossing his leg like it didn't just happen. Now, to me, that set up a person that is smart, but at the same time, they're a little bit crazy. So I don't know. I found it wasn't really that quick because he already started off kind of.
You got a hint of it, but I feel like it didn't quite carry out.
I
feel like he fights every single time with Frankenstein versus Frankenstein up until you get to the point where finally he's brought life to dead cells, and all of a sudden, and that's Frankenstein. He literally yells it out, right? So I know what you're saying. That whole stabbing of himself in the leg was a hint at what was to come, but it was almost too sudden for me because that until when he brought the monster to the screen, there was nothing transitional to me about it. I felt like we saw the humorous moments that built up and built up and built up. All the characters that came to screen. Igor and the fiancé and the assistant that was rolling in the hay. Like all of these things were absolutely perfect as to the build up to him becoming instantly a kook. I don't know. That was a little odd.
Well, two things. One, it is a comedy, so you can't, and it is a spoof, so you can't take it too seriously in that sense. It's like, well, I didn't see his character turn this way. It's a spoof. So, I mean, they're going to do whatever they need to do to speed up the process to get the story going. Second of all, I think that in itself is kind of a spoof of these old movies where it's like you got this back in the day of like someone going insane. That's totally like cliched of those old black and white horror movies. Like if you think of like Vertigo and like all those kind of movies, like just someone going nuts. They always just flip and turn for no reason or for no good reason. You know what I mean? It just happens. It's. I definitely think it's a spoof of that in itself. You know what I mean?
Following in their footsteps of in terms of an art style, I guess.
Yeah. So as Myles said, I like the sets as well too because I feel that it also pays a great homage to those old horror flicks. But before we get into what I like, you got to finish what you like and what you don't like.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys.
I'm sorry. I actually interrupted you.
Honestly, I think it was just two simple things. I absolutely loved I guess you could say the transition. It wasn't even transition. It was just him becoming a kook, but I think it was also my complaint. It was how fast. That's why I elaborated so much. I loved the journey. I didn't like the pace of the journey. It was almost like, Lord of the Rings, but in a matter of 10 steps. No, not that bad. I feel like it was just... Simply
said, yeah, we started with him stabbing himself at the beginning, and the entire journey to going to his grandfather's, old abode. That whole journey was the fun part for me. It was not so much once he figured out how to bring Frankenstein to life, and then it became all about the monster. It wasn't so much Gene anymore. Maybe that's my gripe in itself. But you're right about one thing. It is an art style, lending to itself from others, that it's paying homage to. And it is based on another, writing, which is the story of the monster of Frankenstein. It's been retold so many times, you obviously can't expect it, the same way. But comedy-wise, it makes sense. Build up the character to the point where you have the monster on screen and let the monster take over from there and then have them feed off each other. Because it was absolutely hilarious the amount of times where Gene would, snap on film and you could tell he was absolutely nuts and the monster looked more sane than him, for crying out loud, because even with just simple grunts, we understood exactly what he meant.
All right.
Cool.
So favorite was...
It was like I said, I enjoyed the journey of him becoming a kook. A lot of fun. All the humor and all. I did not like the pace of it.
Okay. I will start with my least favorite in this, and it was the pace at the very beginning. As I said before, it does take you... it takes a while to get there, and to me, it was just like, you're not sure... it's supposed to be a comedy, but you're not sure when it's going to get there. So every once in a while, they drop in a little joke here, a little joke there, a little joke there. And it's very, Mel Brooks humor, old dad humor. So if you're not being, shot out all these Mel Brooks jokes, a whole bunch at a time like you usually are, maybe Zube said in, maybe a Spaceballs or Men in Tights, then you might get a little bit bored and be like, okay, where's this going? Is this ever going to get to the point of being a comedy? And you're just like, okay. And then but finally, it gets to... one particular scene for me, and it starts getting a little bit funny before this scene, but I find after this scene happens, for me, it's just kind of okay, now they're having fun. Now we're having fun with this movie, and that's Putting on the Ritz. And I don't know what it is about that scene, but it always stuck out to me. The first time I saw it, the second time I saw it, in fact, I only know the song because of this movie, Putting on the Ritz. And it's just this whole, not only is he bringing this monster to life, and he's trying to show all these people, that he's like, oh, I'm not crazy, and look what I've done. I brought I've reanimated a dead body. So no, he goes to such a circumstance. He trains the monster to do this whole song and dance with the Putting on the Ritz. I don't know what it is about that, but it fucking cracks me up. It's ridiculous. And once it gets to that point, I feel like the movie starts having more fun with itself. And you can start having more fun with the movie, and once it goes from there, you can just start having fun with this. Or that's for me, anyways. So that was my favorite part, and like I said, my least favorite is the slow build, or what I felt was a slow build at the beginning.
Yeah, I have to be fair. It is a spoof movie. I don't want to be too critical on a spoof movie. And that one scene, it did have its moment where, it was trying to. And what got me was the crowd. Was that the crowd was all freaked out at the beginning when they saw the monster. Then Jpar just said, calm down, it's okay. And then you cut to the scene of the crowd, and they're all calm, nothing's matter. They're just controlling. A couple of women were still, and they're being controlled. And then all of a sudden, just when one light bulb breaks out, the fire, and then the monster freaks out. That's when they start throwing things to the. It wasn't as bad singing, but he's freaking out about the fire. That's when the crowd lost control, which is funny. That's the funny part.
Okay,
Once again,
I was wondering where you're going.
Okay,
with that.
are you saying that's funny?
Okay.
Well, I was gonna say,
So
is
it's
that the
funny.
point? Because once again, I think we're coming back to spoofing the old movie itself.
Right, and that's why it's a spoof, right? If you're looking at it critically, it's that doesn't make any sense. It's so all over the place. It doesn't make any type of sense. But that's the whole point of a spoof movie, is that the crowd is so ridiculous where it's freaking out, calm, then rioting just based on the Frankenstein monster just freaking out by the fire, not as bad singing. That's the because that yeah, it was a high pitched one.
Yeah, I can't do it. It's actually kind of annoying.
It's haunting me in my nightmares.
When you hear it, you're just like, what is he saying?
I actually didn't know what he was saying there first.
Putting on the Ritz.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh shit, you actually did pretty good.
Yeah, I know. I had to do something there. I'll spare the details.
Oh, but it involves a tweezer.
Just a little squeeze.
And a tug.
Anyway, so this has been our review of Young Frankenstein, and this has been recommended by our listener Scott, a longtime listener, and we want you guys to recommend more movies for us to review this October. Anything that's Halloween related, it's anything scary, monsters, anything of that nature, just recommend it. We'll pick the best, and we're going to do 2 to 3 more of these at least for October. Also, keep your eyes out on the Facebook page. We have started a contest where you're going to get your promise points, and those promise points are going to get you a name mention on the show, and are going to we're going to tally up the points, and we're going to see who knows their movies by naming that scene. So when you see us post a scene on Facebook, be the first to name that scene, name the movie of that scene. It's got to be the full name, and you will get whatever promise points are there. So with that being said, Lori and Janet are this week's ones who have named our the scenes. Lori has gotten herself 3 promise points for naming E.T., and Janet has gotten herself 3 promise points for Young Frankenstein, which was the mystery caption this time, referring to our review tonight. So they are up there. You can take a look at the Facebook page, Promise Point Leaders. Everyone up there has got 3 right now. Who will be the first to break 3? Who will be added to the Promise Point Leaders? We'll find out. Keep an eye out for that scene posted on Facebook. And as always, you can like us on Facebook. You can join the conversation at We Promise Nothing, drop the G. But don't forget to check us out. We will be at Northern Game Expo this Sunday, and we will be covering that. We will have a lot of... we're going to put some video up, so if you want to see our ugly mugs, you'll finally get to see that. And you'll probably see us there, and we're going to be meeting up with Talk Nerdy, doing some cross-promotion stuff. We got more coming out. So once again, you can follow us, join the conversation. We Promise Nothing, drop the G. We're also on Instagram. Zube.
Yeah, We Promise Nothing with the G.
And that G is me! So if you like what you hear, remember to like, subscribe, and share. This is Jpar signing out.
Zube saying I'll be dizzying.
Myles saying, hasta la vista, senoritas.
Da Boo going to bye-bye.
And remember, if you disagree with anything you hear on the show, you can leave a comment below. But as always, we promise nothing! Good night.
Werewolf!
Werewolf!